Hi everybody, it's Christine with Ziedman Development, and today I want to walk you through how to work with an alias as a way to track a third-party provider ID number. So I know that many of you are using in particular as a way to connect multiple databases and a way to keep all of your data synchronized into Razor's Edge. And this is an easy way for you to link the ID numbers from your third-party systems into Razor's Edge to help you match your data just a little bit better. You definitely could put those ID numbers in other places besides Alias, but the reason I'm showing you the Alias is because I want to show you the full functionality of how you can work with it as an alias in Importacular to help you track more than one ID number per person or to help you match with those criteria sets. So there are other potential ways you could do this, but none of them have the same functionality as Alias, and I think that the Alias functionality is going to be beneficial for most organizations. So that said, let's go ahead and start with looking at my alias mapping. So you can see here I have a row for my online giving ID. And when we click on it, we can see that I have it set up with an alias type and a key name. So the key name is the actual alias itself. And the alias type is that value in Razor's Edge that tells us what alias we're working with. So for example, if you look at my dropdown, I have things like an acronym or a former name or a maiden name. For this sample, I'm working with what I'm calling my unit ID. So this is going to be the online giving ID that I have in my sample data file, and you can see that when I drag my screen out. This is my online giving ID, not to be confused with my names or anything else in my sample file. So let's go ahead and save that mapping. Before we go any further, we do want to take a quick look at these area settings and make sure that they're what we want for this specific piece of data. So when I click on my area settings, I've got a couple options here. The top three things help me determine what do I want to do if there's a matching alias. The bottom section tells me what is a matching alias. So right now, these are the default settings. And in the default settings, a matching alias is going to be we have the same type. So if the constituent in Razor's Edge already has an alias of unit ID in this particular setup, it's going to be a match. However, if I want to change it and say it has to have the same match, we have to match the alias type and the key name, that alias value, then I can check this box. So if you want it to match both of those things, check the box. If you want it to just match on the type, just leave it as it is. Then the thing you need to consider is it possible for one Razor's Edge constituent to have more than one ID number coming out of your third-party system? So for example, if your Razor's Edge account is Bob and Judy Jones, and Bob and Judy have separate accounts in your third-party provider, maybe it's an email provider and they each have a separate email account, but you want them to be a joint household account in Razor's Edge. If that is the case, you very well may want to select the first option of always add new alias because you may want to link the account numbers for both Bob and Judy to the constituent account that you're counting as their household account in Razor's Edge. Similarly, we could select the account that was our default account, add new alias only when no existing match found. If we leave it on this setting with our default setting of only matching on the type, what's going to happen is if we have Bob and Judy again, and let's say the last time I imported this, Bob was the constituent that I imported information with. So we have in Razor's Edge the unit ID with Bob's account number. If I leave it on these settings and Judy makes the gift this time, we are going to update that alias. So that means that we are going to replace Bob's unit ID with Judy's unit ID. That may or may not be what we want, but that's what it's going to do. If we choose the third option, do not add new alias when existing match is found, it's going to maintain Bob's unit ID and it's going to completely ignore Judy's unit ID. So make sure you choose between those settings what is going to do what you want Importacular to do. Let's go ahead and leave those as they are for now. And I want to have you take another look at how we're going to use this alias. Now that we have it mapped as an alias, how are we going to use it to look up our constituents? So the next thing we need to do is come up to our constituent mapping here. And again, we're going to visit our area settings. So click on my area settings and you can see that I have already checked the box here that I want to look up by alias. So that's adding a field in my mappings. It's grayed out for me now because I've already checked the box. I've already opened this template. I've already added a value there. But if you're opening this the first time, it won't be grayed out for you. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this, and I want to show you what I've already done. So we've got our mapping here, and see how we have alias search lookup only? That wouldn't have been there until we checked that box. And then what I have done is I've selected a mapping for that same lookup ID. So, or that same online giving ID so that we can look up by it. That said, there's still one more thing that we do need to do. So I'm going to save and close my template here. And we're going to come to our criteria sets. Right now, I'm just going to open those individual constituent sets because that's all I'm working with today. But what I need to do now is I need to add something to my constituent sets so that we are looking for an alias and we're matching on an alias. So I'm going to add a row, and I'm right now working with just individual, so I'm going to leave it on that. And I'm going to add a check here in the row for last name / org name aliases because I want to match on those alias numbers. So we're going to go ahead and tell that okay. And I want to move this up because this is far more reliable than our poor setting. And we're going to move it to the middle. I'm going to leave it underneath the email addresses for now. And I'm going to mark it as good because anything that's an exact or a good is going to give us the option to update in that review screen. Anything that's poor is going to give us a decide. So let's go ahead and save our set. So now when I run this, not only is ImportAcular going to match on my constituent ID, it's going to match on email addresses and first name and last name and addresses. Now we are also going to be matching on those aliases of that unit ID that I've added for my online giving ID. I hope that you find this helpful and that this gives you a new way to kind of match those donors and to keep all of this synchronized. Thanks for joining me and have a great day.